Greetings, brothers and sisters. Don Lemon's GOP hypocrisy is off the charts. Wow, we better tune into this. It's from Huffington Post. He's putting this out there. Here he is, Don Lemons. What do you got to say? At Don Lemon. Where's the yes, Lemons?
And the hypocrisy of the Republican Party is off the charts tonight. And don't start with me about, this is liberal. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm an American. I don't belong to any party, okay?
Are you seriously trying to claim that, Don Lemons? You're a Democrat and you're a liberal. It's just, if anybody's a Democrat and a liberal, it's you. You're being featured on Huffington Post. You voted for Democrats. You slathered all over Joe Biden, who was a horrible candidate, and you demonized Trump and the Republicans your entire time as a, shill. I mean, you're not even just a liberal and a Democrat, but you're a shill for all these things. Like, yeah, you're an American too, but you're totally anti-Republican. Are you lying to yourself, or you're lying to all of us, or both? I vote C, both, right? I think you're lying to yourself. Of course, that means you're lying to us as well. But, if anybody's a Democrat and a liberal shill, in terms of the mainstream structure of these things, you're it. And you're totally pro-liberal Democrat stuff. Everything to do with liberal Democrats, that's what you feature on your show. But mostly it's about hating Trump and hating the Republicans. I've seen now multiple clips of your show. I've seen interactions between you and dopey Chris Cuomos. And CNN is a pro-liberal, and not real liberalism. I've talked about that before. Real liberals are leaving the Democratic Party. They're either going for Sanders or they're becoming truthers and things like that. But you are the epitome of a Democrat and a liberal media shill. Like, that's, by definition, that's what you are, right? You're within a box. You're not outside the box. You are the box. Now, people who watch my stuff, you'd realize that I post, support for some conservative points of view and some liberal points of view, and I don't vote. I no longer believe in the voting system. I haven't for years. I'm not going to acknowledge, or I am not going to consent to something I know that's rigged and fixed. In terms of the electoral process, I'm not participating in something where it's just for show. Because even if your vote mattered, which it doesn't, whoever's the politician is, they're controlled. And Trump was controlled. Trump had his handlers. Everybody should be able to see that now, right? I believe there's a spiritual solution. The political, I gave that a try, right? I saw how politics works. I saw how national politics works. On a local level, yeah, there's a little bit more, there's a little bit more reality, a little bit more movement, a little bit less control on a local level. But that's going to be, you're going to see that disappear as well. But there's a spiritual solution. The heartfulness meditation that I do is about that, right? I've been talking about a spiritual solution. Because on a spiritual level, you're manifesting reality. You're manifesting the world tomorrow. Right now, you're creating, inside yourself, you're creating the future. Your thoughts, your actions, your intentions, your goals, all these things, individually and collectively, we're all manifesting the future right now. And so if you want to change the future, you change what's inside of yourself. I know, that's just basic spiritual principle. Psychology wishes it was able to do that, right? The psychological movement. But anyways, let's see what else he's got here. This non-liberal, this American citizen, non-liberal and non-Democrat. If you vote Democrat, you're a Democrat, right?
But the hypocrisy of the Republican Party is off the charts. And I'm going to explain to you why. They are suddenly calling for, get this, civility and bipartisanship. Well, civility from the other guys is what they want. While Republicans continue to slam President Biden's nominees, bipartisanship? but not one single Republican willing to support the president's COVID relief package, which has support from more than 70%.
That's your big claim to hypocrisy, that they're saying we need civility and they are not being civil. That's what you're saying, that the Republicans are only ones doing that? Because every politician says, oh, we got to work together. That's what every politician says. But right now, the Democrats and the Republicans are in full-out war. And they might be behind the scenes buddy-buddy. But in terms of the American people and what the controllers want, because the American people are out for blood. The American people, the majority of people who are either Democrat or Republican, are out for blood. The Trumpers, they're not, going to concede everything. They think Biden and the Democrats are evil. And the Democrats, the Trump haters, now think that all Trump voters are racist conspiracy theorists, which you say constantly on your show, right? Like, that's what you talk about the Republicans. But you say you're not partisan? Like, I mean, the way that you talk about Republicans and CNN talks about Republicans and Trump, there's no way there can be any, you can't, if you are thinking that people are crazy conspiracy theorists that are going to try to overthrow the government and they're racist hate mongers, you can't come to common ground with people like that, right? If you believe that's how they are, right? Just like if you believe that all the Democrats are child-eating Satanists, then yeah, there's no common ground. There's no possibility for that. And it's just, most of that stuff's just for show for the people. And the people that control the system, the controllers, want division. They want political division. They want racial division. And so to call it hypocrisy on the Republican side, they're all liars and they're all hypocrites, right? Including you, Don Lemons, for you to open this thing being outraged. Oh, they're saying they want partisanship, but they're not showing. Yeah, so did Biden. Biden said he was going to be a president for both the right and the left, and he passed stuff that was just only going to provoke the right. I mean, this is just politics. Like, come on, buddy. You got anything else?
Of the American people. I hope you're listening, Republicans, because I got something for you. And I want you to listen right now. This is Senator John Cornyn outside the White House just today.
Respond to the criticism that it's unfair for Republicans to criticize Neera Tanden's tweets, given a lot of lawmakers largely ignored former President Trump's tweets for so many years?
Well, I think I can stipulate that there's been a lot of incivility when it comes to Washington, D.C. and how we communicate and talk to each other. I would just say that we could all learn a little lesson here, I think, about increasing the civility in the way we treat each other in a very polarized country.
What?
He did a double take. Look at Don Lemons bringing the double take. Watch this thing here.
What?
You should have done a spit take there, Lemons. Come on, buddy. And what's really hilarious about that is there's nothing there, right? Like, that's going to the beach and taking one grain of sand and going, look at this thing I found. Look at I just found. Like, there's a million clips like that are not newsworthy. That wasn't newsworthy. Like, he thinks, and he said, hey, you Republicans, I got something for you. You got nothing for them. Like, he's basing this on, Trump, that everyone has the same view of Trump in his tweets. That's what he's basing his outrage on, and Republicans simply don't. Trumpers don't. And so he thinks, wow, look, I got the smoking gun. And look, when you see this, I mean, the lack of depth of this clown. Like, it's the most superficial news. He takes things that aren't newsworthy and he gets outraged by them. Like, this is common political speak, right? And he said there's been a lot of uncivility, right? Incivility, which Don Lemon's going, what about Trump? You didn't say anything about Trump. Look at the hypocrisy. It's so superficial. And Don Lemons thinks he's plunging deep, right? With his double take.
What? 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 Where were those guys a couple months ago, last administration, the guy before? Where were they with this civility and let's bring down the temperature and the tweets? And where were they? Who's been trying to restore civility? Who's been trying to restore civility? Who's been calling GOP senators to the White House like today? Who campaigned on civility and reaching out across the aisle?
Yeah, that bogus campaign, because he's not going to give the Republicans anything they want. He's just going to be taking away Trump supporters' stuff. That's pretty much, if you don't understand what's happening right now, and I've talked about this in recent videos, that the system, the economic system, was going to collapse in the way it's collapsing right now, or the way it's already collapsed. There's just not enough money for the promises and the lifestyle that American people have. And you're going to lose things. The ability to drive, that's something on the table, right, that they're going to take away. Your ability to drive, Americans' ability to drive. They don't have it anywhere like we do in America. And so the infrastructure is breaking down. And it's going to be, moving people to the cities. That's the other piece, because if you can't drive, you can't be out in the suburbs. I mean, all this Agenda 21 housing and things like this, Agenda 30 housing, whatever, where people are cramped together, that's a part of it, right? They've been talking about this for years, that fossil fuels, this is a part of the whole, climate change thing. Each American's carbon footprint, has to disappear, and that's, the reason they're given for that, right? And also, land ownership, owning houses, owning land, this idea in the Global Economic Forum that by 2030 everything will be rented. You won't own anything. And to do that, to get that, happening, they have to, take Americans' ability away to do something, have things, have things that would prevent that, have personal possessions that would, give them the power to prevent that from happening. So that has to happen. They have to take that away as well, right? Personal possessions that would level the playing field if there was conflict, if there was revolution. That's why they keep on talking about privileges and, people who are not the wealthy people. The wealthy people are going to contain their wealth. That's the plan. They're going to increase their wealth. The people who are, slightly wealthy, millionaires and, make $100,000 a year or these things, they're getting rid of all of that. They're going to bring all that down, the middle class, the upper middle class. You're going to have poor and the wealthy. That's a part of their plan. That's their stated plan. And so Trump supporters who have things, people who own things, because you got a lot of Democrats who think, wow, now we're these different demographics that make up the Democratic, coalition, think, oh, wow, they're taking down the upper middle class. They're taking down these Trump-supporting demographics, mostly, white people. They're taking them down. They're going to raise us up. And that's, it's just they're taking the, Trump supporters down, but everyone else is going to stay at the same level. And they're creating division and hatred so that it doesn't blow back on them, the people who control the system. The people who are shilling like Don Lemons, maybe they get some, right? Maybe people like that get some blowback, Pelosi, and the people that you see. But for the most part, it's going to be groups that hate each other, these various demographics that hate each other, and they're just fanning the flames of that hatred. And these are the rules and the rhetoric. And so to say that Joe Biden campaigned on unity, right? Like that's just, it's so remedial. And this is how bad CNN is.
While the other person was campaigning on the exact opposite, and was criticized for being naive to think Republicans would work with him. You guys are just beyond. You know who's been doing that? The guy who lives in the building right behind them. That's President Joe Biden.
A good thing you're not a Democrat. Joe Biden is a lifelong career politician. And he makes the, appearance of working with the other side. That's been his claim to fame. But he's not going to give the other side anything in terms of what they, because there's nothing to give away, right? I mean, the money that they're giving away and the stimulus, it's already like the debt ratio, the, tax revenue debt ratio is so out of hand. I've talked about this. I've made this, recent videos about this. The debt levels have gone beyond critical, the critical levels where everything's insolvent. Like there's no way to repay the debt. and everything's upside down. It's like being upside down in your mortgage, right? Where you're paying, more money, substantially more money than the value of your house and the car and all these things. That's where we are, and there's no way to fix it. Like, there's a point in your personal debt. If you get into personal debt, credit card debt, and just whatever it is, a collection of debt, your mortgage, your car, all these things. And your ability to make money in terms of whatever job that you do is now disappearing. Your skill level is no longer appreciated, and you're capped off on what you can possibly earn for money. And without winning the lottery, there's no way you can pay back the debt. That's when people go Chapter 7 or 11 or whatever it is, right? And so they declare bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy, because they realize they're insolvent. Now the banks are insolvent, our country is insolvent, and everybody who knows anything about economics knows this, that the debt is just spun out of control. And so there's nothing to give away other than, creating more debt to give it. And say, all right, whatever, we'll just pretend we're not, And at some point, and that point has been like the last year and a half, it's been, all right, we got to do something about this. And there's been a plan for a long time because everyone knew this was coming when our ancestors left the farm, when our ancestors agreed to a usury-based economy. And Don Lemon should totally know this, but he doesn't. I don't think he actually does. Like, I don't think Don Lemon functions on a level of abstract thought.
Who, by the way, probably doesn't need the lecture about civility right outside of his house. And then there's Senator John Thune. Senator John Thune, who claims he's not personally concerned about Neera Tanden's tweets, but sure has a lot to say about her tweets.
I'm not concerned about tweets,
He's not concerned about tweets. He's not concerned about no tweets.
I think that her record is pretty extensive of being very partisan, and there was a concern about whether or not that carries over to the job, which is important, and one where she's going to have to work with people on the other side. I personally am not worried about tweets. I think but I do think that your digital footprint now should be a reminder that's all going to come back to bite you at some point.
I'm not worried about her tweets, but her tweets, but her emails, but her tweets.
Okay, now I'm going to have to go look at her tweets. I didn't really want to because I just wanted to do a quick thing because Don Lemon is always, he's just a clown. Here's what it says about her tweets. The Washington Post, what terrible things did Neera Tanden tweet? The truth. She's the truth. She was a truth teller. We'll go to the Wall Street Journal thing in a second. So this is what she said here that's being, held to account. Miss Tanden tweeted that Mitch McConnell was Voldemort and she called him Moscow Mitch, compared Ted Cruz unfavorably to vampires, and called Tom Cotton a fraud. Said that Bernie Sanders, a frequent Tanden target, was helped by Russia in 2016 primaries, and called Susan Collins' reasons for voting to confirm the Judge Brett Kavanaugh a pathetically bad faith argument as cover for President Trump's vicious attacks on survivors of sexual assault. Those sound like conspiracy theories to me, Don. Those are on the level of Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're QAnon level tweets, right? They are that kind of level tweets. And so for all you guys, this looks like the Washington Post and Don Lemons are ignoring her tweets. Like, they could just admit, I said about Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's going to cause a problem. Things that she said were false and inflammatory, or exaggerating or demonizing things, or saying things were fact when they're speculative. We live in a time now where if the people you are, criticizing or whatever your theories are, whatever your personal point of view, and I'm glad people are being honest. Like, I don't have a problem with her tweets in that sense, or Marjorie Taylor Greene's, in the sense of, be who you are, right? Just admit what you actually believe, instead of being a fake politician, instead of being a brand, right? But you guys have wanted Trump to be a brand for his whole presidency. All the people in the media. You want him to be more presidential and be a fake. And this woman is doing the same thing as Trump. She's just going out there and letting it fly. And that is, completely partisan and hostile. And the Republicans have the ability now to not give her a job, and they're not, right? And so to call this hypocrisy, I say the same thing to Cubies and Trumpers who come to my channel, right-wing leaning people. You didn't have a problem censoring or the cancel culture when you were in charge of doing that, when your group was in charge of canceling people. And they got canceled, through the Reagan years. And for so many years, the right was able to cancel people and censor them. And now it's, that has flipped. And so you can't be upset about it. You didn't complain when your group was doing it to another group. It's the same thing. They obstructed Trump for so many, his whole 4 years. Don Lemons and his, he's not really a Democrat, but he just, seems to always agree with the Democrats. This is the real problem here. This is why, there's three distinctive groups. There's people on the left that believe, the Democrats that believe the Republicans and the right is evil. And you have people on the right who believe the same thing about the Democrats. And you have a group that just doesn't care and doesn't, they're not involved, so it really doesn't matter. They're just, doing their thing, enjoying their lives, but they're unfocused on anything that's going on, completely oblivious. And then there's a fourth group that realizes the system is screwed, that there's no way to fix the system, and that this is what the people that control the system want, is that the two major groups, the majority of people, about 60% of Americans, think the other side's completely evil, and there's no room for common ground. And you have this in a divorce situation. I talked about this personally, where your narrative of reality, like you'll go see a movie and, your description of the movie afterwards, or you'll have an experience together, and your description of the experience or something that happened in the past, something that you went through, your story is completely different. Like your reality is completely different than your, soon-to-be divorced person, right? Unless one of you realizes, or you both realize, that your reality is skewed and that you're not seeing things correctly, that yours is completely subjective, which almost never happens, then there's going to be a divorce. And it's going to be even worse afterwards, right? It's just going to get, even worse afterwards. Because if one person or both people are completely misremembering or rearranging reality to demonize the other side and to make themselves the hero in the story or the relationship, or if one person's just completely crazy and evil, which happens quite often, then there's no common ground, right? Because a crazy person isn't going to realize the error of their ways, and the other person still has issues, whatever they have. And so that's where we are, where you have two groups that are delusional about what they are and what the other side is. And they hate the other side. And that's not going away. And so that's going to destroy America, aside from the fact that there's too much debt and America's already destroyed. There's just no way to fix this system. And so you have to get to that point at some journey in your exploration of the truth. You realize that the two groups are never going to come together. And this is just politics. And someone as superficial as Don Lemon, just like you have on Fox News and the right-leaning news organizations, they're being dishonest with themselves, right? They're lying to themselves. No matter how, maybe the other side's a little bit worse or whatever, yeah. But is your side good? Are you good, right? Are you a productive person? Are you a truthful person? Are you growing spiritually? Or are you just a part of the problem?
It is really rich that Republicans suddenly think that mean tweets disqualify a person from serving in our government. Well, a Democratic woman anyway.
You set the behavior. Like you guys went after Republicans' tweets. You went after Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweets recently. I mean, this is something everybody's doing now. Like they're doing it on the right and the left. See, Don Lemon's whole premise of this clip he's doing, this segment, is that the Republicans are being hypocritical. when he has for years, the last 4 years, gone after Donald Trump's tweets and then other people's tweets on the right. And then this woman who's being, a Biden appointee had controversial tweets that are on the same level of inflammatory, insulting things that he criticized and the left-wing media and the Democrats criticized about Trump. And they're saying that's okay, right? He's not confronting her and saying, yeah, I'm against tweets, right? I talk about this all the time. Are you against the behavior, or are you just butthurt about a specific issue, right? If you're against the behavior, then you condemn the behavior when anybody does it, whether you agree with them or not, right? If you're against the behavior, if you're condemning a behavior, then you have to condemn it when the people on your side do the same behavior. Like if you're only against the behavior when your enemies do it, then you're, a butthurt little whiner, right? And you're being hypocritical. Don Lemons has exposed his own hypocrisy unknowingly, his own, delusionment, his own lying to himself and everybody else by saying, well, these guys didn't speak up against Trump. Yeah, but you're not speaking up against this woman and other left-wing tweeters, right? And so you guys are all hypocrites. I mean, just be honest, and this is a nothing story. Like, this is just a waste. Time and energy. It has no insights. It's not insightful at all. There's nothing here. There's nothing to see. Yeah, people in Washington, D.C. and the media is hypocritical. Wow. Big revelation, Don. Thanks. They're combing through people's social media history and their, digital footprint, as that guy said, and they're finding something that would preclude them from having the job, which is, you guys attacking Trump for his tweets for 4 years. And so now you've brought that into play, right? That's something you guys did on the left, I know you're not a lefty, Don, right? You're not a real Democrat, but, only that you are. And so, like, when one group does something, then the other group is saying, all right, we're now using that. Like, that's part of the rules of engagement. And going after people's tweets is now part of the rules of engagement. And no one should complain about it because you guys all did it, right? Everybody does it on the internet. People find things disturbing that somebody says. They comb through all of somebody's social media and they look for something, one little thing. They don't look for something great or brilliant that the person said. They don't listen to what the person is saying. They look for something that they can demonize the person with. That's the intent. That's how media rolls. That's how social media rolls. This is how the truth community does. Everybody does this now. So no one should complain about it when other people, are doing it to them. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. What goes around comes around. These are basic principles that when you do something, that behavior is going to circle around the universe and come back to you. And speaking about coming around, what goes around comes around, pervasive harassment. Former Cuomo advisor says governor kissed me on the lips. Lindsey Boylan said New York Governor Andrew Nipple Ring Cuomo, or nipple barbells. I mean, repeatedly made inappropriate comments to her, including "Let's play strip poker." Like, how did that come up in a conversation? In a work-related conversation. How did Cuomo's? I want to know how he worked that into a conversation. Like, where did that? Like, he's the governor, and she was a chief staff at Empire State Development, and so I wonder how that worked out. I'm compelled to tell my story because no woman should feel forced to hide their experience of workplace intimidation, harassment, and humiliation, not by the governor or anyone else. Here's the let's play strip poker. I should have been shocked by Governor's crude comment, but I wasn't. We were flying home from an October 2017 event in Western New York on his taxpayer-funded jet. He was seated facing me, so close our knees were almost touched. His press aide was to my right and a state trooper behind us. That's exactly what I was thinking, I responded sarcastically and awkwardly. I tried to play it cool, but in that moment I realized just how acquiescent I become. And so I guess they were on a plane together, and he just rolled out, let's play strip poker, because he just really wants to show off them nipple barbells. And so now that's what you have, right? Cuomo's, who was a hero, and now it's just falling apart for him post-Trump. And this is the post-Trump reality that the Democrats and, Don Lemons and all these people, because he's not a real Democrat, all these, media people who don't have Trump to kick around anymore. They're going to have to cover other things. They're going to have to cover, think about the hypocrisy of, Cuomo putting sick people with COVID into nursing homes and them having record death rates in New York State because of it, and then hiding these results, and the media and Don Lemon's buddy Chris Cuomo's particularly celebrating Cuomo, who is just an out-and-out creep. Like, how is he any better than Trump? A sexual harasser and somebody who's, really guilty of manslaughter and should be in prison. And he was, supposed to protect these people, but he was celebrated as a hero. And now it's all falling apart. Once rising stars Cuomo and Newsom sink by their own failings.
The FBI, along with the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney, has now opened a preliminary investigation into New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The investigation comes after a report by the New York State Attorney General forced Cuomo and his administration to acknowledge that they underreported the state's nursing home death toll by thousands. So joining me now, just more, is NBC News correspondent Tom Winter. And Tom, I'm trying to understand. I know that Andrew Cuomo is in a massive political crisis.
Right.
What is he under? What did he do? They think he did illegally that would bring him under investigation by the FBI.
You don't know. He put sick people in with the most vulnerable population.
Right. So it's a great point. So from a political standpoint, the issue of the nursing home deaths and what happened there has been a political hot potato and a real issue for the governor.
It's a very hot potato. It's a potato that's, really hot.
It turned into a bipartisan issue when the New York Attorney General came out with a report saying that these deaths may have been undercounted by half. Now, that's not the total. The state's death toll is not changing here. It's just, were the deaths allocated to the nursing home or were they allocated to hospitals? And this all stems from an order that the governor's health department.
It's not about the data. The guy put an order out there. He took overcrowded hospitals, or what he said was overcrowded hospitals. He took patients who were recovering and still sick with COVID and put them in nursing homes, and there was an explosion of deaths. The cover-up is not the point. The point was that he put people who were really sick in with the most vulnerable population. That was a really bad decision, and it led to deaths, and there should be lawsuits. Like, people who have relatives who died because of that decision should sue the crap out of New York. And this would be something that could bankrupt the state. Like the level, they would receive, maybe up to like $1 billion. We're talking about thousands of people, right? Let's say 1,000 nursing home deaths. There was 13,000 nursing home deaths. How many of those were a result of Cuomo putting 9,000 sick people back into nursing homes? And so all of those nursing home deaths relatives, if they all sued and they won $1 million, which would be low, and that was 13,000, whatever, say 7,000, that's $7 billion New York would have to pay out when people are moving out of the state and the state is just falling apart, especially the city, and people are moving out of the city. And so, this could be something that bankrupt the state, and Cuomo's would be on the hook for this thing.
Department put forward last year in the heart of the coronavirus epidemic here in New York in an effort to try to cut back on the amount of people that were staying in the hospital. So, yes, a big political issue. Now, the question that you've asked, why is this potentially a federal criminal issue and there's a federal criminal investigation involved? This goes back to about a week ago, Chuck, when the governor's secretary was talking with state legislators, why they hadn't been updated on these numbers. And she said, because we were in a position where we weren't sure if what we were going to give to the Department of Justice or what we give to you guys, what we start saying was going to be used against us while we weren't sure if there was going to be an investigation. And this goes
because they committed a crime. You know, if this isn't manslaughter, at least it is something in the civil court that would be easy to prove that this was, you know, criminal negligence on this guy's part. You don't put sick people in with people who are very vulnerable to that sickness. Like, you know, I mean, it's not rocket science. And so the part about Newsom was it been an even worse governor in California. People are leaving there in droves, and that's, you know, intentional. I mean, if you got to look at the results of something, right? If people are at each other's throats, if the Democrats and the Republicans hate each other, and the various racial demographics and the left and the right are, you know, fighting amongst themselves, right? If people are angry and hating each other and things like that, that's intentional. That's all right. Whatever's going on reveals the intent of the people that control the system. Division, you know, all these things. And so if people are moving out of New York and California or the cities, that's something that's intentional. They're doing that for a reason, right? These things are all, you know, the way that these governors are behaving. This guy Newsom, like, he didn't do this on his own. He didn't close down California and basically bankrupt the state. The people who are over him, right, didn't say, all right, well, do whatever you want, right? No, they're like, this is what we want you to do, and he did it, you know. Same thing with Cuomo's, but then they're going to turn on you. Then you're going to be the fall guy. I mean, this is how it works, right? They love you until they don't love you. Speaking of this is Chris D'Elia, remember? It's been a while.
Hi, everyone. I know that it's been a really long time since you've heard from me. And when the news broke, I put out a statement that said everything I've done has been legal and consensual, and that's true. And I wanted that statement to speak for itself. And I wanted to...
But then it didn't go away. But then what he was, you know, the problem didn't go away. So now he's got to do damage control of some sort or another.
Talk immediately. I wanted to post online. I wanted to do my podcast, business as usual. But I thought that might not be the best thing. What might be the best thing it would be if I just take this time to be with my family, try and take a long, hard look at myself, and just and do that. And
he's really pale, right? What's up, bro? Like, he's going. Maybe he took this time to really ghoul it up. Plus, when people say, "I took a long, hard look at myself," like, you know, I'm all in for introspection. I'm an introvert. I meditate. I mean, I'm pro being introspective. But when somebody's in trouble and they're like, you know, I got to go back and take a long, hard look at myself. You know? You mean you don't see it now? Like, you know, you don't know what the problem is. You know, it's not as obvious to you as it is to the rest of us.
It was a lot. It was hard. I first of all, I do know how it looks with all the stuff that's been said and the emails that have been put out there and what the media has been trying to say. And I know it looks bad, and it doesn't
look good. It looks bad and it doesn't look good, right? You know, you're just a creep. He did creepy comedy. His comedy was creepy. He's just a creepy guy, right? I mean, it's not like, you know, I mean, this is what he said was true. Like, what he did was, it seemed to be consensual, because then he posted tweets and things that people said to him and these girls said to him. I mean, again, it was not anything that appeared to be illegal. And so I made videos about this guy, but some more information came out, and I felt like, you know, there was his side of the story. He was still a creep, but it wasn't like, you know, the original stories. He had these young girls posting things, but then he showed what they said to him and things like this, and it was in context or whatever. It was still bad, but it was, you know, it was just whatever, right? It's just Hollywood. It's mild for Hollywood. The guy's a creep. He's not really, to me, funny. He's not a good comedian, you know. Justin Bieber said he was his favorite comedian, and he somehow, he got on some TV shows or whatever it was. I mean, he was connected. His dad was connected in Hollywood. His dad was powerful in Hollywood, right? And so, he is what he is, right? He's not going to be a saint. He's not going to be a leader. He's a Hollywood person. He's a child of Hollywood, right? And now, somehow that's being canceled. Man, he should be canceled for sucking, like for not being a good comedian, and also being creepy. But that is whatever it is. The cancel culture should be more about not doing the job you're supposed to do. Or these fake apologies where he said he did some soul searching or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, just be honest. That's what I liked about Trump. Be who you are. And that woman's tweets that Don Lemon was talking about, I already forgot her name. Be who you are, right? Stop pretending to be something that you aren't. Like, just be honest about who you are. Like, that's the problem. Like, I say this all the time. People will say it to me. Why do you claim to be a spiritual person and you mock people or you do these things, say whatever it is? And I'm like, well, I don't claim to be a spiritual person or a good person, but I'm a better person than I was because of the heartfulness meditation, right? Like, that's what you should be focusing on, becoming a better person and leaving the world a better place. But that doesn't necessarily, it's not that's the goal. It's that when you become a more godly person and you bring God into your life, you start and you meditate and you become introspective, then you naturally become a better person because you see things in a different way. Like, you take personal responsibility for your shortcomings and your failures, and, God shows you things that you have to correct. And the things that people will criticize about me, which, some of those are valid criticisms, they're things that I need to do this job, right? Like, I have to come at these things in a certain way, right? I have to, I can't, endorse any of these things that are going on. And the lightest way is to mock them instead of just making it really heavy and, all these things. Making it like, oh, this is horrible and, be a part of the cancel culture. I make it light. I take these things and, I'm able to demonstrate how bad they are in a light way. But it's a cesspit. And you have to survive the cesspit in whatever way, whatever tools God gives you to survive in the cesspit. But those tools, at some point, you, like any instrument, you pick it up when you need it and you put it down when you don't, based in what God wants you to do, like based in your spiritual evolution and your spiritual path. And I'm here in the cesspit for my viewers' benefits, right? For your benefit. Like, I could make spiritual videos that only a few, a handful of people, 1 out of every 100 or 1,000 people would be interested in, have much lower viewership, and the messages that I have to deliver, that I'm responsible to deliver, would only reach a small fragment of the population of people who are already doing something spiritually. They're already spiritually conscious in one way or another. Being in the cesspit expands my audience and people who are able to receive this message. And so, you're welcome.
Show the full scope of what happened. I stand by the fact that all my relationships have been consensual and legal, and that's just it.
Yeah, but is it though? Then why have you been hiding now for so long?
That's the truth. Through this kind of time away, I've seeked out a lot of kind of, medical advice, therapy, and stuff like that.
But if your relationships were all consensual and legal, then why did you do that? If you did nothing wrong, like, why would you,
that doesn't matter here nor there. But what I have come to understand is this was always about sex to me. My life was, sex, it controlled my life. It was the focus. It was my focus all the time. And I had a problem. And I do have a problem.
All right, so he has a problem. We know. Look at this. Look at this. This sums everything up, right? Yes. This is the expression. This is 2021 right here, right? The year of the schism. That's just a great way to stop this thing. So the point to this video, something I don't talk about all that much, but I should, mention it a lot more. We shouldn't lie to ourselves. It's a very easy concept, but most people struggle with it. And when we start lying to ourselves, and what I mean by that is when something happens out in the world and, God gives you feedback, your soul gives you feedback to your ego about yourself, and there's a moment of shock and a moment of clarity. And oftentimes we can't self-perceive. We don't understand how other people think about us or how other people experience us or how the world experiences us, right? How we are received by others, because we're, pushing out, right? We're not receiving ourselves, even though we are in some ways, but not consciously. We're not on the receiving end of the product that is us, right? We're the supply, and we're not on the demand side. We're on the supply side. And the world mirrors back to us what we, give out, what we present to other people, to the universe. The universe is, that's what people say, but it's not really the universe, right? It's to the external world. It's to planet Earth, for most of us. It's what we're putting out as a product, as the product that is you to the world. And we receive feedback, and then we say, oh, that's not fair. The feedback I got isn't fair. You understand this? The feedback that I'm getting back, that I'm receiving, is unjust. And then you'll go to your friends and say, look at what happened to me. Oh, yeah, so totally you're unfair, right? And you have all these types of, people who are supposedly supporting you, but they're not telling you the truth, right? They're not being honest with you and saying, yeah, you totally deserve that. You don't see that you deserved what you got, but you don't want to swing to the other way where you're self-flagellating, right? You're beating yourself up and, exaggerating how bad you are as well, right? You just need to be realistic, because that's a form of lying to oneself as well. You see these people who are constantly apologizing for themselves or their country or their race or whatever it is. And so that's, that's also being dishonest. You have to be, realistic about what you're receiving back. Like, I get comments all the time that are directed towards me, and they have nothing to do with me. That's why I keep on saying I'm not running a complaint department, and I'm not looking for feedback, because it's almost always wrong and unhelpful. It's usually about the person. It's not people who are looking at me specifically and seeing me, right, or seeing you or whatever it is. And then they're, thinking about, all right, this person needs a correction. Like, if you really want to do this with somebody, it takes a lot of effort. I had to do this as a counselor, and, it's something where you got to figure out how to help the person to see something that they don't want to see about themselves. And so if you're really into helping somebody deal with a character flaw, you're not going to just blurt out, hey, you suck, and this is why. Because it always has the opposite effect. The person usually goes deeper into their belief system. That's why when the left and the right are going at each other all the time, and they're going at each other based on their beliefs, the same thing with people in the truth community and so-called sheeple, the normies, it just makes, when you are like, your beliefs suck, and this is why, and you're mansplaining, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man, but it's what I'm talking about here. And you're just, rigidly telling people what to believe or, how they're all wrong. They're just going to go deeper into their own thing. They're just going to go deeper into their beliefs, and they're going to, push back against you. Force begets force, right? Force always creates a counter force. And so that doesn't work. So if you're really into changing somebody, then you're sacrificing your own needs, maybe praying for them, maybe setting something up, in some way. I mean, working on a spiritual plane of existence to help them, like you're doing this with your kids, help them to see, setting up the circumstances so they can see what they're doing wrong, their character flaw, in some masterly way. I mean, this is what the masters of the heartfulness system do for people on a spiritual level. that, you know, the feedback will come for them in a way that they can receive it in a palatable way, and they're given the opportunity to see what they need to change about themselves. And even then, people often don't. But that's what it takes. Like, you have to figure out, you know, the person's specific learning style, and, you know, and I mean, on so many different levels, you have to set it up, not just by blurting out the answer, because if that was the case, I would still be a therapist, right? If bluntly telling people what sucks about them and telling them what to do worked, then, you know, therapy would be easy. Being a therapist would be easy, and it's not, because, you know, people are in denial about their stuff, right? They don't want to hear it. Here is, you know, what I'm talking about here. I just got a comment, and I was going to make a comment video about it, but I'll just put it in here. And so this person writes, this now banned person writes, "COVID is a lie. You had the flu, brother." And I say almost in every one of these videos, don't tell me I had the flu. Don't tell me, you know, I don't know my own body or whatever it is, right? I've had an experience that you haven't had, and I'm not wishing it upon anybody. I don't know if it's a experience that people, you know, should go through, but I had a moderate case of COVID. My wife also had she had a slightly less severe case of COVID, but once you have it, you realize it's not the flu. And I don't care what you believe. I say this over and over again. Just don't tell me what I had, right? Because I know what I had. And this isn't about me. It's about you and your rigid belief system and the bumper sticker speak that people go through. You understand this? People speak in bumper stickers so much in the truth community. And that's a common thing to say. Oh, you had a cold, you had the common flu. Because that's the rigid belief system that these people have. And I have no intention of trying to convince them otherwise. I know that they're just lost. And it isn't just about COVID. It's about everything. They lock in, they see a video, they lock into, you know, a template, a construct of beliefs, and then they speak in bumper stickers because they can't really articulate their beliefs. They can't articulate their beliefs because they're not really their beliefs. They saw a video, they had somebody who has critical thinking skills or have the ability to present things, and then they just regurgitate what they saw, but they really can't. They can't really express what they saw in a video or somebody else's point of view, and so they speak in bumper stickers. They see other people who believe like them. It's flat, you know, it's a girl, right? Trust the plan. COVID's fake. You had the flu, right? It's the same thing. You see these comments. I'm telling you, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of each of these types of comments I just mentioned. It's just something that, you know, and it's not whether the person can change their mind about this belief or that belief, because they will. You know, they'll get COVID and they'll change their mind. They're like, oh wow, this sucks. Like, you know, it's not the flu. And if they got COVID, they would realize. And still they would be, you know, the same kind of asshole, right? They'll just move it to something else. Then they'll just be rigid about that, right? Argumentative. And, you know, again, it's about who they are and how they think and how they perceive. So it isn't my, you know, I mean, I don't, you know, this is not my chosen demographic. I don't want people like that here watching my videos. People who think and speak in bumper stickers. I don't make videos for low consciousness people. Like it's not what I'm supposed to be doing here. It's not about beliefs. It isn't really even about the truth community. It's about understanding that we need to change and evolve personally and as a group collectively. I mean, the writing's on the wall. We can't keep on going the way we're going. We're going backwards. People are getting stupider and less evolved in terms of our skills, in terms of, you know, what we have inside ourselves. That's what's most important, our software. People define themselves by what they have, right? What they've become. Well, I have this degree from this college. I have this job. I have this much money in my bank account. I have this car. I have this thing, you know, this external thing. Look at the technology that we have. Look at the phones we have. Look at how great we are. Look at our TVs. They're like 4 times bigger than the TV is when I had a kid. Look at our extensive, you know, networks we have, all these things. You know, look at the computer I now have and compared to the computer I had 10 years ago. See, we're evolving. No, our technology is getting better, but we're getting worse. What's inside of us, who we are as an essence, is moving farther and farther away from what we could be. we're losing potential. We're going away from our potential. We're reverting into something lower and less. You can put a big screen TV in with a lion or a polar bear at the zoo. It doesn't mean they're more evolved. And then you put them back in the wild and they're just, they're dead in 2 days, right? They don't know how to be what they were intended to be because they've been, raised in a zoo. Yeah, you can give them a remote control or a cell phone, right, to a bonobo, but it doesn't make them better as what they are, right? It means that they have a piece of technology, and the more they depend on that technology, the less that they become, right? The more the technology does for them, the more the system does for them, the less that they become. Their expression of their potential is getting less. And so we have the system that we've become more and more dependent on with each passing generation. Our descendants, right? Our descendants are going to be weaker and less evolved and less, less of their potential. My dogs are fighting again. Less of their potential. And so, that's what's happening. And that's what we have to be honest about. The system has produced worse human beings. Human beings are a product of their system. Partially, we are who we are as a soul, as an essence, but the culture and the society we grow up in, the family we grow up in, also shapes us. There's, nurture and nature. There's our genetics, there's our soul, there's our samskaras, there's these, our impressions and things I've talked about in past videos. And then there's our society itself, our culture, our government, all these things, our stories, those are very important. Those things shape us as well. And we see the product that is the human species right now, the American, has gotten weaker and worse. I was talking to my kids about this last night. And my grandfather, their great-grandfather, and he wasn't, he had his issues. There's things, he had character flaws, and, he was there was things that he wasn't great at or whatever it was, his consciousness. He wasn't really a spiritual or godly person. But he volunteered for World War I when he was 15. Then he came back and played professional football for, this is what leather helmet stuff, right, for $10 a game. Then he went to World War II, and then he came back and he was a fireman. He saved people's lives, and he could build boats, and he made fishing poles. We fished with fishing poles that he made. They were better than professional grade poles and things like this. He had all these skills and things. And he smoked like a chimney, and he was a fireman back before they had oxygen masks and things like this, breathing in all the toxic fumes. And, he worked with chemicals when he built boats and fishing poles and things that he created. He was retired in Florida, and he died at 80 of lung cancer, but he could have lived to 100, right? My other 3 grandparents all lived into their 90s. And so they were different, in terms of toughness, in terms of, all these things. In terms of what they were able to create themselves, the previous generations, our ancestors, were a lot stronger, and they were a lot more capable of sustaining things, right? They were just tougher and all these things. And now, there's been an evolution in various ways in terms of people's understanding of things, and there's been some growth in terms of we can look back at our parents, our grandparents, and say, well, that's stupid, right? Some of the rituals, some of the past rituals and things that people believed in, we can see through them. But for the most part, we're just weaker and less than our ancestors. And so we're going in the wrong direction. Spiritually, we have this opportunity. I've talked about this over and over with the heartfulness meditation, to connect to God on a deeper level internally that wasn't available. This, practice, this way of connecting with God through the transmission that's given the heartfulness system was never available before. It is, not to the masses. It's been available, but just to a handful of highly developed spiritual beings at different times in, very specific locations around the planet. But in terms of everybody having this, this system, and like I said, the transmission that was given in the past, you'd get one transmission your whole life. This spiritual energy that's given in the heartfulness meditation. People who feel it, there's many people who've watched these videos have done it and felt it. And it goes with, it's just like anything else. I used to talk about the magic eye. There was these books that were holograms, and until you saw it for yourself, it was hard to believe. You're like, are you messing with me, right? There was these books that there'd be a picture and you'd have to relax your eye muscles and you could see the picture within the picture. But if you didn't see the picture, you're always, doubtful about it. It's just like what I was saying about COVID. Now, I can understand why people believe COVID's fake because the government, the system lies to us all the time. I understand why you believe that, so I'm not saying the belief is stupid, but it's the rigidness in which you believe. You say, all right, it's fake, so anybody who says that they had it, they're either lying or they must have had the flu and thought it was something else. I'm like, no, I'm not saying the official story behind COVID is true because obviously it's not. Like they're lying to us in some capacity. It might be from anything. Who knows if it's a virus? Who knows what it is? So COVID itself is whatever it is, right? But when you have it on a moderate case, it messes with you on all these levels. And so when these rigid binary thinkers who don't have the ability to self-perceive how they interact with other people, how it might be received, when I'm talking about, my heart fluttering and, my family having similar symptoms, my kids who had no symptoms other than that, and we just happened to be talking about it, and then my son's like, oh yeah, I had that too, right? Like he just happened to come down and we were talking about it. My daughter was saying, oh, she's been having it. And so, I didn't even know that they were having things like just weird. Your heart is out of sync. And so who knows what that, what's causing that, right? In terms of the COVID, but people are experiencing that. And so when you say, you just had the flu, what are you talking about, right? The flu doesn't make your heart skip. It's like stupid, and you're minimizing my experience. You just had the flu. You just had to have the flu. You're whiner, yeah, good. Go somewhere else. You're not welcome here. You binary thinker, right? You don't, just your inability on a social level. Like this is what I'm talking about. People don't, unless they see it for themselves, then it's, it doesn't exist. That's why the experience is so important for people. In terms of the heartfulness meditation, people try it, and some people feel the transmission, some people don't. It takes some time. Sometimes people it takes a little time for them, it takes a little cleaning, and then they experience it. Or maybe they experience it, but they don't really register the experience. I don't really, I felt it in the first 3 sittings, and that's what kept me here in the heartfulness system. Had I not experienced something, I probably wouldn't have stayed because there was nothing else there for me. Like I didn't really like to meditate, and it wasn't something I was looking for. I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't actively wanting to meditate. I didn't, in fact, I didn't want to meditate. Like I tried it before and didn't like it. And the heartfulness system is very specific to experience. So if you don't experience benefit, then you're not going to do it because there's no there's no rhetoric, right? You're not going to be, you shouldn't be, like if people are doing this, they shouldn't be doing it. Putting pressure on family members and, whatever it is, right? People have to come to it themselves. There's a young guy that my kids hung out with. He was a college person, right? He just graduated college, kind of a funny kid. And his dad, whom we knew was sort of a, jerk, said to him, if you don't do the heartfulness system, you're not my son. And he said, so I wasn't his son for 6 months. With some kid in India, right? And that's just not cool. That's the opposite. This guy was, a trainer and things like that. That's the opposite of how you should be in the heartfulness system. It's something each person has to choose for themselves. And it's not based in threats or bribes or promises. It's based in experience. You have to benefit, and the experience keeps you going. That's the way it's supposed to be. That you trust your experience. You trust that you're going in the right direction. And humanity right now is going in the wrong direction, going back to the initial point of this, voiceover portion of this video. When you hear Don Lemon say, you look at these 3 examples, they were people who were lying to themselves, right? In terms of their placement in this video, Don Lemon saying that he's, not partisan, he's not a Democrat, and he's not a liberal, those are all lies, right? And he seems to actually believe that because he can't self-perceive. Andrew Cuomo, who was always a thug, and you could just tell the guy was a bad dude. He's a bad dude. Joe Biden. And, they celebrated him as a hero, and that was a lie. And he paraded around. He was proud of himself when he was in charge of the place in the world that killed more people per capita. Again, in America, in terms of the COVID, it was, America's supposed to have better, medical facilities and things. In New York City, being one of these premier places in the world, people all know about New York and New York State, New York City, and they had more deaths than anybody. He had the biggest failure as an administrator of COVID, and he was celebrated as a hero. And now, the truth is there, right? And he's denying it, denying all of it, denying his, his lack of leadership and his character. And then Chris D'Elia coming out, somebody who is just a creepy Hollywood product, right? His dad, an influential person in Hollywood, got him a lot of different, he knew somebody. Like, it wasn't because he was great as a talent. He knew somebody. And then he had these creepy, various relationships with young girls and things like this, 18, 17, whatever it is, right? And so now, all these things are coming back to them. And how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the truth, right? Because it doesn't matter what other people think about you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what someone else thinks about you. I mean, it does to you, but that's not what's important. What's important is what you think about yourself. Babaji, the second master of the system, said, really the problem with lying is when you start lying to yourself and believing your own lies. When you start believing your own lies, which is, what everybody does, then, things fall apart. Everyone should understand what they are and what they're succeeding in, and not to pat themselves on the back, and what they're failing in, but not to feel guilty and ashamed and, hate yourself and these things, right? Just be honest, right? You're a person that you came down here to change and grow. And most people just want to rigidly stick to, they want these routines, or they just want everything to be the same way and all these things. And they don't want to, face themselves, right? I mean, that's, the problem with humanity. They don't want to come down and change. You don't want to incarnate in. I mean, you do, your soul does, but then you get into some sort of, pleasure-based, pleasure-oriented type of lifestyle, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do this, right? I'm just going to enjoy myself. And that's where all the problems start. Like, you have to evolve and change. You have to grow. You have to, go through things. You have to evolve out of your lower tendencies. You got to, live off your samskaras and things that block your connection to divinity and, what you are as a spiritual essence. And you have to become more of what you're supposed to become. You have to be growing into your, spiritual potential, your human potential with God, your God's version of you. Like, if you were the perfect version of yourself that God imagines you could be, right? Your full potential, realizing your full potential. That's what they mean by self-realization. Realizing what you are as a spiritual soul, as a pristine spiritual essence. And that's what needs to happen. But the, self-deception and people, lying to themselves and whatever that means, because people lie to themselves about their limitations. Some people aggrandize themselves, like that's the people that you see in the celebrity culture and the Cuomos and the Lemons and all these people, right? All the Hollywood people. They aggrandize themselves and they think they're greater than they actually are. Great as an ego, not great as a soul. And then you have spiritual people that think of themselves as less than, and they never evolve into what they're supposed to become. So it's about being honest with yourself, not to, beat yourself up and not to have these inflated narcissistic ideas of what you are, right? Just embrace what you really are. Embrace your true essence. That's the reason for the heartfulness system, is to figure out what you are, what your purpose are, what your role is, and do the job, do the job you are assigned to do, contribute to your brothers and sisters in the world, make the world a better place, and, evolve spiritually. Face up to the things you have to face up to, endure the things you have to endure, enjoy the things you're supposed to enjoy, right? Just be a natural person and be honest on a moment-to-moment basis in what that means. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.